I transmigrated into a villain Omega hamster who forced 4 powerful men to marry him, only to discover they all hated him, loved my manipulative stepbrother, and would eventually leave me to die alone. So I decided to stop caring. I was just planning to eat expensive food, waste money, and nap peacefully, until my emperor father was betrayed on the battlefield, and the entire empire discovered the lazy hamster prince was actually the most terrifying monster in the war. The first thing Shunli noticed after opening his eyes was the ceiling. Gold. Actually gold. Not painted to look expensive gold. Real gold. The second thing he noticed was the softness beneath him. The bed practically swallowed his body whole. Silk blankets wrapped around him like clouds. The air smelled faintly of sandalwood and sweet pastries. Pastries. His assassin instincts immediately sharpened. Food nearby. Excellent. Then someone screamed, "Your Highness is awake." Shunli flinched hard enough to nearly reach for a knife that was no longer hidden under his sleeve. 10 servants rushed toward the bed with tears in their eyes. One held medicine. One held tea. One held an entire tray of desserts. Shunli stared at the desserts first. Priorities existed for a reason. "Your Highness, are you still feeling ill?" a maid asked nervously. Shunli blinked slowly. "Right. Transmigration. Villain hamster. Terrible love life. 4 husbands with emotional constipation. Dead ending." His memories slammed into place so violently that his headache doubled instantly. The original owner of this body was named Lin Yuza, 3rd prince of the Beast Empire. An Omega hamster with no powers. Spoiled. Arrogant. Obsessed with forcing powerful men to love him. And currently hated by almost the entire kingdom. Shunli closed his eyes again. "I died just to become someone else's public embarrassment." One servant looked horrified. "Why, Your Highness?" He waved a weak hand. "Nothing. Existential crisis." "Continue." The servants exchanged deeply concerned looks. Shunli ignored them and focused on the important information. This body had wealth. Status. An emperor father who spoiled him beyond reason. And enough food in this room alone to feed an orphanage. In his previous world, Shunli had grown up starving in underground slums before becoming the deadliest assassin of the Black Serpent organization. He had survived torture before age 10, killed before age 13, spent his entire life covered in blood and fear. And now? Now he was apparently a rich hamster Omega whose biggest problem was, "My husbands hate me." Honestly, compared to assassination missions, this sounded relaxing. A middle-aged servant carefully approached. "Your Highness, the 4 lords arrived earlier to check on you." Shunli nearly choked on tea. "They what?" The servant looked confused by his horror. "They heard you collapsed after chasing 2nd Prince Lin Su into the Lotus Pond." Memories surfaced instantly. Ah, right. The original owner had slipped into the pond while trying to accuse his stepbrother of seducing his husbands. In front of all 4 husbands. Dignity had drowned before the body did. Shunli rubbed his face. "I assume they came here to insult me." The servant hesitated. "Mostly. Reasonable." Shunli accepted this calmly because, honestly, the original owner sounded exhausting. Another servant spoke carefully. "General He Yuan said if your highness dies from stupidity, he will not attend the funeral." Shunli snorted. "Okay, that was funny." The Black Panther general apparently had personality. "What about the others?" Lord Baichun left medicine. The wolf general asked if your highness damaged your brain permanently. Advisor Hujin smiled. The room fell silent. Shunli immediately pointed. "That one. That last one. Most dangerous." The servants nodded fearfully. Correct reaction. Foxes were bastards by nature. Shunli sighed and leaned back into the pillows. Then froze. "Wait. Very important question." He slowly looked at the servants. "How much money do I have?" The servants looked startled. "Why, Your Highness?" "How much?" The head servant swallowed. "Your personal treasury currently exceeds the Western Province's annual taxes." Silence. Shunli sat upright instantly. "I forgive everyone." The room stared. He pointed dramatically toward the heavens. "This is my destiny now. I was born for luxury." One maid started crying again. Probably emotional. Or frightened. Hard to tell. Humans were weird. 3 hours later, Shunli finished his 5th plate of honey cakes while reading through the original owner's records. The more he read, the more horrified he became. The original Lin Yuza truly loved his 4 husbands. Painfully, desperately, pathetically, he bought gifts constantly, followed them everywhere, destroyed rival families out of jealousy, forced the emperor to arrange marriages through emotional blackmail. And despite all that power, not one of them loved him back. In the original story, they eventually abandoned him for the second prince, Lin Su. Sweet, gentle, kind, manipulative little snake. Shunli already hated him, mostly because the memories revealed Lin Su constantly provoking the original owner behind closed doors while acting innocent publicly. Classic White Lotus behavior. Humanity truly invented the same annoying person in every universe. Shunli tossed the papers aside. Divorce. The servants gasped. I want peace. They want freedom. Everybody wins. The head servant looked ready to faint. Why, Your Highness, you once threatened suicide when General He Yuan avoided your letters for 3 days. That was old me. New me has standards and survival instincts. He had no interest in fighting over affection, especially not with 4 terrifying men powerful enough to destroy armies. No thank you. Love sounded exhausting. Food sounded reliable. A knock interrupted the room. Before anyone could announce the visitor, the doors opened. A tall man entered wearing black military robes. He Yuan, the Black Panther general. Sharp golden eyes. Cold expression. Broad shoulders that looked unfairly expensive. Shunli stared for exactly 2 seconds before thinking. Ah, that's unfortunate. Because the man was extremely handsome. He Yuan's gaze landed on Shunli lounging among snacks. His expression immediately hardened. You recovered quickly. Shunli nodded seriously while chewing pastry. Medical miracle. He Yuan crossed his arms. I came because His Majesty ordered it. You chased Lin Su into water over jealousy again. You embarrassed yourself in front of half the palace. Probably. He Yuan narrowed his eyes. Something was wrong. Usually Lin Yuza would already be screaming, crying, or demanding affection. Today the Omega simply looked sleepy and oddly calm. Shunli swallowed another bite. You can relax, General. He Yuan frowned. I have decided not to harass any of you anymore. Silence. The servants looked ready to call doctors again. He Yuan stared. What game are you playing? No game. Shunli waved lazily. I reflected on life while unconscious. For one night. Near-death experiences are educational. He Yuan looked deeply suspicious. Fair. Shunli would also distrust himself. The general stepped closer to the bed. His powerful predator aura pressed heavily through the room. Most Omegas would already submit instinctively. Shunli simply grabbed another cake. He Yuan stopped walking. Their eyes met. For one brief second, the room turned cold. Because beneath the lazy expression, there was something terrifying inside Lin Yuza's eyes. Not obsession. Not desperation. Death. Cold and familiar. The kind seen only on battlefields. He Yuan's instincts screamed instantly. Danger. Then Shunli blinked. The feeling vanished completely. He smiled brightly and held up a pastry. Honey cake. No. Your loss. He Yuan left shortly afterward with a visibly unsettled expression. The moment the doors closed, Shunli collapsed dramatically into bed again. Too tiring. The servants looked helpless. Their prince truly seemed different. Meanwhile, outside the palace hall, He Yuan stood motionless beneath the rain. His beast instincts still felt disturbed. Something had changed. Something important. And for the first time since marrying Lin Yuza, the Black Panther general could not understand his own Omega husband anymore. Shunli's new daily routine became beautifully simple. Wake up. Eat. Avoid responsibilities. Nap. Spend absurd amounts of money. Repeat. Honestly, civilization peaked with rich people doing absolutely nothing. Unfortunately, peace never lasted long around idiots with unresolved feelings. 3 days after his transmigration, the imperial palace descended into chaos because third Prince Lin Yuza refused to attend morning court. Again, the ministers nearly exploded. His Highness skipped court yesterday too. He spent 50,000 gold on imported mooncakes. He bought a golden swing for stray cats. The Western merchants say he tipped them with pearls. Shunli listened to all this while lying sideways on a couch feeding grapes to a tiny hedgehog he had adopted from the market. The hedgehog's name was Meatball. Priorities existed. An elderly minister pointed at him furiously. Your Highness, the Empire faces border tensions. Shunli nodded solemnly. Terrible. You should not be gambling at the pleasure house during such dangerous times. I was supporting local businesses. The minister clutched his chest. Good. Cardio. Across the hall, Emperor Lin Wen tried very hard not to laugh. That alone told Shunli everything he needed to know. The Emperor adored this son beyond reason. And now Shunli understood why. Every memory involving the Emperor felt warm, gentle, protective. The original Lin Yuza may have been spoiled rotten, but his father truly loved him. A dangerous feeling twisted unexpectedly inside Shunli's chest. Unfamiliar. Uncomfortable. He ignored it immediately. Emotions were annoying. The Emperor sighed dramatically. Yuza. Shunli straightened slightly. Yes, father? You threatened a duke yesterday because he insulted your hamster form. He said I looked bite-sized. And that sounded disrespectful. The Emperor nodded thoughtfully. Reasonable. The ministers looked ready to jump into traffic. One brave official stepped forward. Your Majesty, the third prince grows more unruly every day. Yesterday he skipped military etiquette lessons to nap beneath a tree. Shunli raised one finger. In my defense, the tree had excellent shade. You are the future of the Empire. Then the Empire should allow scheduled naps. The Emperor coughed into his sleeve to hide laughter. Traitor. Absolute enabler. A palace guard suddenly entered the hall and bowed. Reporting to your Majesty. General He Yuan has returned from the northern training grounds. Shunli immediately stood. Excellent. Court dismissed. The minister screamed in outrage as Shunli escaped before anyone could stop him. He walked through palace corridors while happily carrying a box of candied nuts. Life truly improved when nobody expected him to stab people professionally anymore. Near the Eastern Garden, he spotted a familiar figure dressed in white robes. Bai Chun, the White Snake pharmacist. Tall, elegant, long silver hair tied neatly behind him. Cold jade eyes. He looked less like a healer and more like a beautiful immortal preparing to poison someone politely. Which honestly suited a snake. Bai Chun noticed him instantly. His expression became cautious. Another thing Shunli had noticed lately. All four husbands seemed weirdly tense around him now. Probably because he stopped acting insane. The bar had truly been underground before. Shunli raised the box casually. Candied almonds? Bai Chun blinked. What? Snack offering. Peace treaty. The pharmacist stared suspiciously like the nuts might explode. Reasonable attitude. Shunli shrugged and popped one into his mouth instead. More for me. Bai Chun watched him carefully. You have not visited Lin Su recently. Correct. You usually visit him daily. Sounds exhausting. Silence. Bai Chun frowned slightly. You truly no longer care about him? Shunli nearly laughed. Brother, I barely care about myself. But he simply smiled lazily. I decided I deserve inner peace. You threw a vase at me last month because I accepted tea from Lin Su. Did I? You screamed for 2 hours. Past me sounds emotionally unstable. Bai Chen's lips twitched slightly before he controlled himself again. Interesting. The snake almost smiled. Humanity continued making terrible decisions. Shunli leaned against a pillar. You don't need to monitor me anymore, you know. I am not monitoring you. You arrived here 3 minutes after court ended. Coincidence. Bai Chun narrowed his eyes. Normally Lin Yuza chased after affection desperately. Now the Omega barely reacted to him at all. It should have been relieving. Instead, Bai Chun felt strangely irritated. Before he could speak again, loud footsteps echoed nearby. A massive man wearing gray military armor stormed into the garden. General Luo Feng. Gray Wolf Beastman. The loudest husband. Probably punched walls for emotional expression. His sharp eyes landed instantly on Shunli. You skipped your combat lessons again. Shunli looked offended. I am delicate. You threatened 3 nobles yesterday. That required no cardio. Luo Feng scoffed and walked closer. Unlike He Yuan's cold intimidation, Luo Feng radiated wild aggression. Like a wolf constantly seconds away from fighting someone. Usually Shunli found men like this annoying. Actually, no. He still did. The wolf general stopped abruptly near him. Then frowned. You smell different. Shunli froze internally. Right. Omega-verse nonsense. Everyone had sense. Unfortunately, assassin training never included how to behave when giant wolf notices your pheromones changed. A new perfume, Shunli lied smoothly. Luo Feng stepped closer. Too close. Shunli's instincts instantly sharpened. Danger. Not because Luo Feng intended harm. Because Shunli himself almost reacted automatically. In his old world, anyone entering his personal space suddenly usually died. The murderous instinct flashed so quickly that Luo Feng visibly stiffened. For one terrifying second, Shunli looked at him like prey. Luo Feng's wolf instincts exploded instantly. His entire body tensed. Every survival instinct screamed. Run. Then Shunli blinked lazily. The pressure disappeared. He yawned. Why are you staring at me like that? Luo Feng stared back in stunned silence. Bai Chen's expression had also changed. Both men felt it. That momentary killing intent. Cold enough to freeze blood. And it came from the weakest Omega prince in the Empire. Shunli internally cursed. Careless. Very careless. He immediately changed topics. Anyway, I'm retiring from emotional drama. Luo Feng frowned deeply. Retiring? Yes. I have decided to dedicate myself to luxury. What? I recently discovered being rich is amazing. Bai Chun pinched the bridge of his nose. Luo Feng looked personally offended. You forced 4 powerful men into marriage only to suddenly stop caring? Shunli considered this. When you say it like that, I sound problematic. You are problematic. Fair. Very fair. Shunli accepted this criticism gracefully. A servant suddenly ran into the garden in panic. Your Highness. Disaster. Shunli sighed immediately. Peace truly hated him personally. What happened? The second prince collapsed. Silence. Bai Chen instantly moved first. What? The servant bowed shakily. His Highness used too much healing power while treating injured soldiers. Luo Feng cursed and immediately headed toward the palace infirmary. Bai Chen followed quickly. Naturally, Lin Su remained their beloved white moonlight. Shunli watched them leave calmly while eating another almond. Then noticed something amusing. Neither man had realized they abandoned him mid-conversation, because they assumed he would follow. Like always. Except Shunli had absolutely no intention of participating in whatever manipulative nonsense awaited there. He turned around instead. Bring lunch to my chambers. The servants hesitated carefully. Your Highness, you truly are not going? Shunli smiled faintly. No. For the first time since entering this world. He chose himself first. And somewhere deep inside the palace infirmary, for men slowly began realizing the person who once revolved around them had suddenly stopped chasing entirely. Humans were ridiculous creatures. The moment affection disappeared, they finally started looking back. The imperial capital entered a state of collective confusion. Because third Prince Lin Yuza had changed too much. The palace servants noticed it first. The prince no longer screamed when his husbands ignored him. He stopped visiting the second prince completely. He no longer destroyed furniture during jealousy fits. Instead, he spent his days eating expensive snacks, gambling with old nobles, and aggressively avoiding political responsibilities like a man fleeing unpaid taxes. Worse, he seemed happy, which deeply disturbed everyone. Humans truly hated seeing people heal. Entire civilizations built on that principle. Shunli personally thought he was thriving. At this very moment, he sat cross-legged on the floor of Moonlight Pavilion wearing loose robes while counting gold coins. Beside him, tiny animal beasts he had adopted recently ran around stealing pastries. A rabbit slept on his lap. Meatball the hedgehog guarded sunflower seeds like a war veteran protecting national secrets. Life was beautiful. Then someone kicked open the doors. Shunli did not even look up. Luo Feng, if you break another door, I'm sending repair bills to your military division. The Grey Wolf general froze mid-step. How did you know it was me? You kick doors with emotional intensity. That's not a real answer. It is today. Luo Feng scowled and entered fully. Tall, broad, irritated. The man permanently looked one inconvenience away from punching mountains. Shunli respected the commitment. Behind Luo Feng walked He Yuan and Bai Chun. Excellent. All three husbands together. This definitely meant trouble. Shunli sighed dramatically. If this is an intervention, I refuse. He Yuan crossed his arms. You skipped the hunting festival. I hate sweating. You used to force yourself into every event we attended. Past me lacked hobbies. You chased us for years, and now I chase inner peace. Luo Feng looked genuinely angry. Stop talking nonsense. Shunli finally glanced upward lazily, then paused. Interesting. The wolf looked exhausted. Dark circles beneath his eyes. Tension in his jaw. Like someone not sleeping properly. Meanwhile, He Yuan remained unreadable, though his gaze stayed fixed on Shunli constantly lately. And Bai Chun, the snake pharmacist, looked thoughtful. Dangerously thoughtful. Foxes manipulated openly. Snakes dissected people silently. Shunli trusted neither. Luo Feng suddenly grabbed his wrist. The room went still. You're avoiding us. Ah, there it was. The emotional stupidity. Shunli stared at the hand gripping him. Instincts whispered automatically. Break his fingers. Dislocate elbow. Kill efficiently. Years of assassin training never disappeared completely. The air shifted. Cold. Violent. Luo Feng felt it instantly. Every hair on his body rose. Predator instincts screamed danger again. But unlike before, this time Shunli did not suppress it immediately. Slowly, he lifted his eyes. And smiled. Not warmly. Not softly. Terrifyingly calm. General Luo, Shunli said quietly, if you continue grabbing me without permission, I will remove the arm. Silence crashed across the room. The rabbit on Shunli's lap fled immediately. Smart animal. Luo Feng's grip loosened instinctively. Because for one horrifying second, he believed him completely. Not empty threats. Not spoiled prince tantrums. Real violence. The kind born from experience. He Yuan's eyes sharpened. Bai Chun stopped breathing briefly. Shunli noticed too late. Damn it. Again. His old instincts kept surfacing accidentally. Being mentally stable sounded fake honestly. He sighed and leaned back again. See, this is why I prefer naps. Human interaction always escalates. Luo Feng slowly released him. What happened to you? Childhood trauma. Murder. Corporate assassination culture. But Shunli doubted those answers would improve the atmosphere. So instead he smiled lazily. Near-death enlightenment. No, He Yuan finally spoke. This is something else. The Black Panther stepped closer. Sharp golden eyes locked onto Shunli completely. You move differently now. Shunli remained silent. You react to danger before soldiers do. He Yuan's voice lowered. And sometimes, his gaze darkened. Sometimes you look at people like you're deciding how quickly they would die. The room became deadly quiet. Well, that was inconveniently accurate. Shunli slowly popped another almond into his mouth. Crunch. General. He pointed casually. You are overthinking. No. Yes. You changed overnight. People evolve. Not like this. Fair. Unfortunately, Shunli lacked better excuses. Before the tension could worsen further, another voice interrupted. Third brother. Every person in the room turned. Lin Su stood near the doorway wearing pale robes. Second prince. The Empire's beloved healing Omega. Beautiful. Fragile-looking. Kind smile. And fake enough to deserve an award. The moment Shunli saw him, memories surged violently. Cruel whispers. Manipulation. Fake tears. Secret threats. The original Lin Yuza truly had been driven insane slowly. Lin Su smiled gently. I heard the generals were here. Luo Feng's expression softened instantly. Disgusting. Shunli almost applauded the acting. Lin Su's gaze shifted toward him. Then paused. Because Shunli looked back completely indifferently. No obsession. No jealousy. Nothing. For the first time ever. Lin Su looked unsettled. Interesting. The manipulator finally noticed his favorite toy stopped reacting. Third brother, Lin Su said softly. You haven't visited me lately. Shunli nodded seriously. I've been busy. With what? Resting. Lin Su blinked. Bai Chen nearly coughed, hiding laughter. Tiny victory. Lin Su stepped closer carefully. I was worried we argued. We did. You're still angry? Shinli tilted his head, then smiled pleasantly. No. And somehow that answer felt worse. Lin Su's instincts prickled sharply. Something was wrong. Very wrong. The old Lin Yuza always looked at him emotionally. Hatred. Jealousy. Pain. But this version? Cold disinterest. As though Lin Su himself no longer mattered. That terrified him unexpectedly. Because manipulators depended on emotional reactions. And Shenli suddenly had none. Meanwhile, Shenli internally admired the prince's performance. Excellent posture. Perfect voice control. Beautiful fake innocence. This little hamster villain's brother would have dominated corporate politics back on Earth. Then again, Shenli used to kill people for money. Different career paths. Same moral problems. Lin Su lowered his eyes sadly. Third brother. I never wanted conflict between us. Liar. Professional liar. Shenli smiled brightly. That's wonderful. Lin Su froze slightly. No argument. No accusations. No emotional breakdown. The second prince suddenly felt deeply uncomfortable. Because the conversation was completely outside his control now. Before he could recover, Shenli stood lazily from the floor. All of you should leave. Silence. Luo Feng frowned. What? I'm tired. He Yuan narrowed his eyes. You're dismissing us? Yes. You used to beg for our company. And now I value silence. The room became tense again. Because none of them understood why rejection suddenly irritated them so much. Especially when this was exactly what they wanted originally. Shinli walked toward the inner chambers without another glance. Then stopped midway. Without turning back, he spoke casually. Oh, and second brother. Lin Su stiffened. If you plan to poison me again, use something tasteless next time. Silence exploded. Lin Su's face drained instantly. The generals turned sharply toward him. Shinli continued walking calmly into his chambers, leaving absolute chaos behind him. Inside, he shut the doors quietly, then rubbed his face hard. I really need to stop causing problems. Outside the room, the four most powerful men in the empire stood frozen in shock. And for the first time, they began wondering if the so-called weak hamster prince had been hiding claws all along. The palace exploded before sunrise. Servants ran through corridors screaming. Military bells rang across the capital. Ministers rushed toward the throne hall half-dressed and panicking like frightened chickens. Honestly, Shenli respected the chaos. It had energy. Unfortunately, he was dragged into it. A servant slammed open his bedroom doors while Shenli slept peacefully beneath 6 blankets with Meatball curled against his stomach. Your Highness. Shenli nearly launched a hidden dagger instinctively. Right. No daggers anymore. Civilized life. Tragic. What? He croaked miserably. The servant looked pale with terror. The Emperor's army was ambushed near Blackwater Valley. Everything inside Shenli stopped. Silence filled his head instantly. What? The Northern Scouts confirmed it this morning. Enemy forces surrounded His Majesty during the march to the border. The servant kept talking. Shenli barely heard another word, because memories surfaced one after another. The Emperor laughing while feeding him fruit during banquets. The Emperor threatening ministers who insulted him. The Emperor personally carrying fever medicine when the original Lin Yuza became sick as a child. Warmth. Care. Love without conditions. Shenli had never experienced that before. Not once in either life. And now someone dared touch it. Something cold moved violently beneath his skin. The servant flinched backward suddenly. Predator instinct. Danger. Shenli slowly sat upright. The lazy softness usually surrounding him had disappeared completely. What about the generals? General He Yuan and General Luo Feng already departed toward the border this morning. Of course they did. Shenli stood silently from bed. The servant's face became increasingly frightened, because the prince's expression had changed. No humor. No laziness. No playful sarcasm. Only stillness. The kind before slaughter. 1 hour later, the imperial court descended into another disaster. You absolutely cannot go. The ministers practically screamed themselves hoarse. Shunli stood before the throne wearing black combat robes for the first time since his transmigration. The room stared at him in disbelief. Because third Prince Lin Yuza looked wrong dressed for war. Too sharp. Too calm. The Emperor's personal sword hung at his waist. And somehow, it suited him terrifyingly well. An elderly minister nearly fainted. Your Highness has never even held a battlefield command. Shunli adjusted his gloves lazily. Then today feels educational. This is not a joke. Neither is father dying. Silence crashed through the hall. The ministers froze. Because the prince's voice carried something terrifying beneath it. The Emperor's closest advisor stepped forward carefully. Your Highness, war is different from palace conflicts. Shunli smiled faintly. I know. And he did. Too well. Different world. Same blood. The advisor suddenly felt cold. Because for one brief second, the prince looked like someone who had walked through mountains of corpses before. The palace doors burst open violently. He Yuan stormed inside first, still covered in travel dust. Luo Feng followed behind him looking equally furious. Apparently both generals turned back immediately after hearing Shunli intended to join the battlefield. Cute. Shunli appreciated the effort. He Yuan grabbed his wrist harshly. You are not going. There he is, Shunli sighed. The door-kicking committee. This is war. Yes. I noticed all the screaming. Luo Feng stepped closer aggressively. The enemy nation specifically wants royal blood. You'll become a target immediately. Shunli stared at them both quietly. Then asked softly, and if father dies? Silence. Nobody answered. Because they all knew. The Emperor had entered enemy territory personally to negotiate military positioning with border troops. The ambush was intentional. A trap. Shunli slowly pulled his wrist free. He treated me like family. He Yuan's expression shifted slightly. His family. The words escaped before Shunli could stop them. The room went quiet again, because everyone knew the third prince loved the Emperor. But this felt different. Raw. Real. Not spoiled dependence. Something deeper. Shunli looked toward the ministers. If the enemy kills the Emperor, civil war follows immediately. Lin Su gains support from the Western nobles. Border territories revolt. Half the empire burns. Several ministers looked horrified. Because the prince was correct. Perfectly correct. Luo Feng frowned deeply. How do you understand military collapse patterns? Oops. Shunli smiled instantly. Books. Nobody believed him. Not even slightly. 3 hours later, the third prince rode toward the battlefield with the imperial army behind him. And every soldier stared. Because the weak hamster Omega Prince sat atop a warhorse with terrifying familiarity. Too balanced. Too comfortable. Not aristocratic elegance. Soldier posture. Like someone born riding into bloodshed. The closer they moved toward Blackwater Valley, the stronger the scent of death became. Smoke filled the air. Corpses lined the roads. Enemy banners covered distant hills. Shunli's eyes darkened quietly. His old world returned immediately. Battlefields never changed. Humans simply invented prettier flags. A scout rushed toward them frantically. General, the Emperor's forces are trapped near the eastern ridge. He Yuan cursed sharply. The enemy pushed that far already? The scout swallowed hard. Their commander uses strange tactics. Every retreat leads into another trap. Shunli spoke instantly. Triple encirclement. Everyone turned toward him. The first retreat route is bait. The second isolates supply movement. The third kills reinforcements. Shunli's voice remained calm. Classic layered containment strategy. Silence. The generals stared. How? Luo Feng began slowly. Shunli ignored him completely. Instead, he looked toward the battlefield. Then pointed. Move cavalry west immediately. He Yuan narrowed his eyes. Why? Because if I were enemy command, I'd hide archers behind those cliffs waiting for flank pressure. The generals exchanged looks. Then He Yuan barked orders instantly. Minutes later, hidden enemy archers emerged exactly where Shunli predicted. The battlefield erupted. Every nearby soldier looked at the prince in horror. Meanwhile, Shunli simply sighed. Predictable. Military organizations across dimensions apparently recycled tactics like lazy students copying homework. The deeper they entered battle, the worse things became. Because Shunli changed. Completely. The lazy prince vanished. The smiling Omega disappeared. In his place stood something monstrous. Fast. Precise. Merciless. Enemy soldiers died before understanding what happened. Shunli moved through battle like flowing violence itself. No wasted motion. No hesitation. One sword strike. One death. Again. 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 Blood splattered across his face while terrified soldiers stumbled backward screaming. Even allied troops began avoiding him. Because the third prince smiled during combat. Not happily. Not crazily. Comfortably. Like he had finally returned somewhere familiar. He Yuan watched Shunli cut down 5 enemy commanders in seconds. Cold realization settled heavily inside him. This Omega, this beautiful lazy prince obsessed with snacks and naps, had killed before. Not once. Not accidentally. Thousands. The certainty shook him violently. At sunset, Shunli finally reached the eastern ridge. And there, surrounded by enemy soldiers, stood the emperor. Bleeding. Exhausted. Still fighting. For one terrible moment, Shunli saw another memory instead. A dying handler from his old world shielding him from bullets. Someone kind. Someone lost. Something inside him snapped completely. The battlefield trembled violently. Killing intent exploded outward so powerfully that nearby beastmen froze instinctively. Even predators stepped backward. Shunli lifted his blood-covered sword slowly. Then smiled. Every enemy soldier suddenly felt overwhelming fear. Because the harmless hamster prince finally stopped pretending to be weak. By the end of the war, the empire feared its own prince. Which Shunli thought was extremely unfair. He saved everyone. Admittedly, he also terrified several battalions so badly that hardened soldiers burst into tears upon hearing his footsteps afterward. But perfection was unrealistic. The battlefield victory spread through the empire like wildfire. The third prince had crossed burning siege lines alone, killed enemy commanders personally, dragged the emperor out of encirclement while covered head to toe in blood. Some swore they saw him smiling while arrows pierced his shoulder. Others claimed enemy beastmen surrendered simply after making eye contact with him. Honestly, both versions sounded accurate. 3 days after the war ended, Shunli sat in the Imperial Medical Pavilion aggressively eating peach buns while Bai Chun treated his injuries. The White Snake pharmacist's hands remained steady. His expression did not. "You fractured 3 ribs," Bai Chun said coldly. You continued fighting." You nearly died." Shunli looked thoughtful. "Technically everyone nearly dies eventually." Bai Chen's hand tightened around the medicine bottle. "I am serious." "So am I." The pharmacist suddenly grabbed Shunli's chin firmly. Their eyes met, and Bai Chen's calm finally cracked. "What are you?" Silence. The room became very still. Shunli slowly lowered the bun. Ah, there it was. The question everyone wanted answered. What kind of Omega slaughtered battlefields like a monster wearing silk? What kind of spoiled prince moved like death itself? Shunli smiled lazily. A handsome burden. Stop joking. No, because he genuinely had no intention of explaining transmigration to anyone. Humans already struggled handling taxes. Interdimensional identity crises felt ambitious. Bai Chun stared at him for several long seconds, then quietly released him. "You changed after nearly drowning." "Yes. You became someone else." For one dangerous moment, Shunli thought the snake had figured everything out. Then Bai Chun looked away bitterly. "But somehow I prefer this version more." Shunli froze. Oh, that sounded problematic. Extremely problematic. Before he could escape the conversation, the doors slammed open. Luo Feng stormed inside first. Naturally, that man entered every room like he was invading enemy territory. "Yuza." Shunli immediately pointed at him. "Why do you always sound one emotional speech away from punching furniture?" "I was worried about you." That does explain the volume. Behind Luo Feng walked He Yuan and Hu Zhen. And unfortunately, all 4 husbands now looked at Shunli differently. No disgust. No indifference. No cold politeness. Worse, interest. Shunli internally felt the survival instincts of a small prey animal activate immediately. Danger. Massive danger. Hu Zhen, the Red Fox advisor, smiled beautifully, which made him automatically suspicious. You vanished after the battle, Hu Zhen said smoothly. I was unconscious. You disappeared before that. I enjoy privacy. You terrified half the army. Only half. Hu Zhen laughed softly. The sound made Shinli deeply uncomfortable. Foxes laughed like they were already planning crimes. Luo Feng crossed his arms. You hid your combat abilities from everyone. Shinli blinked innocently. No one asked. You fought like a veteran commander. Books are educational. He Yuan finally spoke from near the doorway. No book teaches that kind of killing. Silence fell again. The Black Panther general watched Shinli steadily. You've seen war before. Shinli met his gaze calmly. Yes. The room froze. Because that answer carried no hesitation. No denial. And somehow, that honesty felt heavier than lies. Before anyone could continue, another servant rushed into the room panicking. Your Highness. Emergency court session. Shinli sighed deeply. Human governments are exhausting. 30 minutes later, Shinli entered the throne hall and immediately sensed disaster. Too many smiling ministers. Never trustworthy. The emperor sat proudly upon the throne looking far too healthy after nearly dying. Unfortunately, his eyes sparkled the moment Shinli entered. That sparkle meant trouble. Yuza, the emperor announced warmly. Come stand beside father. Shinli's instincts screamed. No. The hall went silent. The emperor blinked. No. Respectfully, Shinli said carefully. Every time you sound affectionate publicly, my life expectancy decreases. Several ministers coughed violently, hiding laughter. Traitors. Absolute traitors. The emperor ignored everyone and smiled proudly. The empire witnessed your achievements during war. Oh. Shinli straightened slowly. Father, the ministers and I have reached a decision. Father, I will begin preparations naming you crown prince. Dead silence. Shinli stared blankly. Then he laughed. Not because it was funny, because sometimes reality became so horrible that the brain simply malfunctioned temporarily. No. The emperor looked amused. No. I refuse. You cannot refuse the throne. Watch me. The ministers erupted instantly. Your Highness, the empire needs stability. You possess unmatched strategic brilliance. One elderly minister practically vibrated with excitement. Most importantly, your Highness must produce heirs immediately. Shinli froze. Excuse me? The minister continued enthusiastically. Strong Omega bloodlines combined with powerful beast husbands could create extraordinary descendants. Absolute horror filled Shinli's soul. No. No, no, no. This conversation had become criminal. Another minister stepped forward eagerly. Additional political marriages should also begin immediately. Shinli looked genuinely offended. Are the existing for not enough suffering? Luo Feng nearly choked. Hu Jin outright laughed this time. The emperor sighed dramatically. Yuza, stop exaggerating. Father, they are discussing breeding strategies like livestock auctions. That means the ministers respect your genetics. That sentence made everything worse. Meanwhile, his 4 husbands stood silently nearby. Too silently. Shinli slowly turned toward them, then immediately regretted it, because every single one looked completely serious. He Yuan's gaze darkened possessively. Luo Feng looked openly territorial. Bai Chen calmly observed him like a man planning long-term crimes. And Hu Zhen? The fox looked delighted watching Shinli panic. Monstrous people. All of them. The emperor smiled fondly. Now that misunderstandings with your husbands are resolved, the family should focus on harmony. At that, He Yuan suddenly stepped forward. The entire court quieted instantly. The Black Panther general knelt. Directly before Shinli. I owe your Highness an apology. The room froze. A general kneeling publicly carried enormous meaning. He Yuan lowered his head fully. I failed to trust you. Luo Feng stepped forward next. Then Bai Chen. Then Hu Zhen. One by one, the 4 men knelt before the Omega they once abandoned. The sight shook the entire court speechless. Shinli stared down at them quietly. Memories surfaced again. The original Lin Yuza crying alone, begging for affection, dying betrayed. A long silence followed. Then Shinli sighed softly. You wronged him, he said quietly. But he also forced his love onto all of you. The four men stiffened. Shinli smiled faintly. So let's end things peacefully. Relief should have followed. Instead, the atmosphere turned terrifying, because none of them looked relieved. He Yuan lifted his head first. No. Shinli blinked. No. We are not leaving. Luo Feng nodded immediately. Absolutely not. Bai Chen's voice remained calm. You are our spouse. Hu Zhen smiled slowly. And now we finally want you. Shinli felt genuine fear for the first time since the battlefield. Not war. Not death. Not assassination. This was horrifying. The ministers immediately became emotional. Wonderful. The royal bloodline is secured. Prepare the succession ceremony. Shinli looked around wildly. The emperor smiled proudly. The ministers discussed future children. The husbands stared at him like predators discovering prey willingly walked into their territory. Absolutely not. That night, the entire palace descended into chaos because Crown Prince Lin Yuza escaped through a window wearing servant clothes while carrying stolen pastries under his arms. Behind him echoed furious shouting. Stop running! Your Highness! Yuzi! Shinli sprinted across palace rooftops in complete despair. An elite assassin across 2 lifetimes. Feared by armies. Respected by killers. Reduced to fleeing from political responsibilities and emotionally unstable husbands trying to impregnate him. Human existence truly was a curse.